And there's kind of context to it that's quite useful to know, and then I'll go into the poem. So my wife is a paramedic, and just as we'd started dating, she went out to a job to, effectively it was a nasty job, and just as she got to the end of it, blood was spat in her eye, doing CPR, and it emerged that the blood was HIV positive. And so immediately she was taken to hospital, where she had antiretrovirals given to her, was given a counsellor for it, and because she's one of the NHS's own, I suppose they really looked after her, was the sense. And what was interesting was that this all happened at the same time as the general election, where I don't know if people remember, but everyone's best friend Nigel Farage was making a big thing of health tourism, but talking specifically about HIV health tourism. And so then we had the Lib Dem councillor who effectively came out as HIV positive, and it started this ripple where HIV positivity became part of the conversation again. It's kind of bizarre to see it working out in the kind of national election context at the same time that my wife was doing the antiretroviral treatment. And because I don't do anything to do with healthcare but write poems, I thought, this is so useful. I'm going to write some I'm going to write some poems. So I effectively started writing through the countdown of having effectively multiple encounters with the hospital, the counsellor, going through this round of antiretroviral drugs. And also talking about in the way that it was also playing out in kind of social, cultural environment as well, that we had this thing happening at home, but also simultaneously it was suddenly part of the conversation in a way that you wouldn't anticipate. So that's the context for this. My wife has read all of this, and she is okay with it. So just to let you all know. Okay, so the first day is number 62. The eye is the organ of vision, and on you it is like a blue-green heartbeat looking with the quiet sign of diagnoses. I imagine the imperfect spheres of your movement, that certainty undoes a sweeping circumference as you purposeful and porous blink once or twice. In 2013, an eye-licking fetish swept through the adolescent population of Japan, and pink eyes spread amongst students in urban areas. The bacteria in the mouth is dissimilar to bacteria in the eyeball. It can lead to blindness. Oculolinctus, and tongue to membrane porous and spit and almost red. Plasma, water, glucose, mineral, ions, hormones, carbon dioxide, red blood cells, albumin, leukocytes, platelets, hemoglobin, self-diagnoses on the internet. New ophthalmologist of the Wikipedia page. You get blood in your eye in a professional and consummate way, while my hypochondria is both inherited and cultured, and we are different in that way. HIV is found in the bodily fluids of an infected person, which includes semen, vaginal and anal fluids, blood and breast milk. 95% of those diagnosed in the UK in 2013 acquired HIV as a result of sexual contact, and you get it in the eye. It is its own pun, and your chances of infection are somewhere under 1%. I am shit at my office job. You can start hearts with your hands. It is a training process with a system we sit outside of, and for now we can touch one another medically and hold hands in public in the right places if we're ready for it. It's worthwhile mentioning that this happened in our first week of dating, which is why a lot of it is the "are we ready to hold hands in public" conversation. 61. I go out without you and my drink is full of insects. The next night you tell me about parasites eating their way out of bodies, the pus and raised skin. I think you want both of us potentially infected, but I start to check my own ribcage regularly in the mirror, feeling for lumps that might mean infestation. You have found the spot that is nowhere obvious, and I imagine I am writing you this beautiful elegy about not having HIV. There are 7,000 diagnoses in this country every year for people who are HIV positive, but 60% of them are not for British nationals. Nigel Farage, 2015. 58. It is funny how our personal dilemma has been playing out across a general election. It not being the 80s, neither one of us could have anticipated its sudden revival, like flares just coming back around, or striking and privatisation and leg warmers. You are a British national. You are lucky not to be a health tourist. In these times, and none of us who live in suspense and fear will be remembered, holding breath in history's silence. You do not seem flustered, and you do not feel disquiet. You who have been cannulated and tested, blood drawn and nauseous, because when the room spins, it is your own bed you fall into without me. 55. Know these hours will inevitably be followed by others, far darker and more difficult. Michael Cunningham, The Hours. The thing about status is vocabulary. I am. Declarative. Imagine staying quiet, 300 people to one lifeboat quiet, hoping to slip in or under a barrier without statement, passport, out of pocket and nowhere. Imagine not being one of the first to drown, to be alive in salt water, undrinkable sea, to kick your legs in a metaphor for death. And know, so certainly, no one is coming. Don't freak out, you say, and we are lucky. There is time for calm. 53. You sleep so heavily and so well, it is like the dulled fantasy of sleep's own fairy tale. I make a window of the street and watch the foxes tear the bins to shreds. In the scenes of wakefulness, the floor stretches around your clothes where your belt buckle like a jaw snaps at the edge of a book. I, tongued and light, think about positives, the slow ways in which we test each other. Bodies cannot sustain the pressure of themselves forever. We will lose count of blood and cells are just entrapment. In the quietness of my own company, the plane goes down. 50. Nothing on earth sounds less like freedom to me. You come to room 1013 over at the hospital. I'll show you America, terminal, crazy, and mean. Tony Kushner, Angels in America. You will have good HIV. HIV for heroes. Historically, the uncertainty becomes larger with time, and we are not cumbersome and heavy or weighed down by safe sex conversations. We just have it. 2 women outside a forgotten plague, years on from Bring Out Your Dead, and sex and ashes sprinkled over the White House lawn. How do we live with the cure, and how do we live with our access? You take the pills back to back without water, you are such a hero. And this would be such a tragedy because you are undeserving, and we bear back in sadness for what is lost, though that is always how we do it as women. People misunderstand the innocence of fucking. That in a time without aisles there were bodies and their freedom, and that heated possibility of strangers. It is not that we are not caution. Never disclose a name, never disclose a home address. Do not disclose sexuality. Anonymous is as anonymous does. And then they ask, die quietly too. 36. When you are most angry, you tell me, I can write my shitty poems about disease, I can write my shitty poems about immigration, because this line is not front line, and do I know what that's like? Do I know what it is like to be on the edge of life and have the tools to keep it or drop it? You never think of lives as ending anymore, just as things that drop as if out of hands. It is not enough that I can quote Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the hardest thing in this world, Dawn, is living in it. Of course it fucking is, you say, because life is its own form of dying, and you will be fine, my love, and we will be fine. And so, okay, the poem is weak, the moment of belief and learning to fight. Or is it enough that it exists, that someone living or dying, writing? What else do we do? 35. Working the dock. Hey sailor, you collect your cardboard and make a fort. Out here in Jungle 2 there is no book and no dancing bear, just the sequel to the bad beginning that Disney didn't make. In Hertfordshire, England, 3 migrants jump out of a school coach bodies in the luggage compartment. What about the children? The children are fine. They all had seats the whole journey. The situation was handled very calmly and humanely by all concerned, and at no point was the safety of pupils, staff, or parents put at risk. Just let someone inside your cab, babe, open up your doors and show the world outside this grand tarpaul in life, where I'll boost you up if you boost me in. Driving through the dock last week, we saw the police vans, then we remembered the hilarious thing you once did, and with our doors locked, we laughed. 22. In solidarity with the striking workers, I walk home in the light of a caustic moon. London has a temperature, and we are fevered, a city that survives. This week, the tubes have been memorialized and stopped striking and killing the extremity of metal and recycled breathing. Our intimacy as one another is the Victoria line or tap water, which is always just someone else's last sip. People move like the day has been lost. We will never strike out or strike back, be the empire, or strike exclamation mark. It will just be a stop and a pause in routine, the trip on the pavement that goes forgotten. Things run smoothly through human hands, which is our only true disaster, this need for one another that nothing else can fill. 6. In spite of your 0% increase pay freeze and my sector's new trend toward exploitative labor, we are buying in celebration for 5 days' time so that we can live in bank balance regret for the next few days together. Because what is life if not in the red or the negative? And we have done both, babe, these last few months. We are readying ourselves in plastic where your chip and pin device has just become a light tap, like I tapped that and have, and I just want to touch you glancingly as we spend. And the drink is insignificant while the money is not. There is something obscene that we are best consolidated when buying together, that a shared account can be the sign of love. I will lay my nothing income at your door and ask for nothing in return. Will pick up work where I can, live in debt and learn loans where the rates of everything will increase and decline, all unaligned to the disproportionate happiness that is already here. So at the end of the process, because of the way that the NHS acted and the antiretrovirals coming in early and the 1% chance of getting blood in your eye, my wife got the all clear on it. But it was happening at a time in which, for lots of people, that really was the case of, you know, pitchforks and flaming torches. Whereas being somebody who did it in the line of duty as they were doing something honourable, it suddenly became this almost respectable badge that the government, the NHS, would respond to positively. And given the discourse that was happening at the time, it just seemed like such an awful double standard of the heroism versus this kind of weird morality surrounding health itself. So that is my extract. Thank you very much.